Welcome to our clinic. We're here to provide you with the best care possible.
Have you ever wondered why a single, gentle touch can shift a man's entire energy, soften him, open him, pull him closer without a word? It's one of the most underappreciated truths about intimacy, especially after 50. Men long to feel chosen, desired, and safe in ways they rarely admit out loud. And touch, your intentional, thoughtful, confident touch, is often the language through which they finally hear what your words can't fully express. And when we talk about 3 places every man secretly loves to be touched, it's not about technique or performance. It's about connection. It's about understanding that some parts of him react not because of physical sensation, but because of emotional meaning. When you touch those places with presence, something in him exhales, something trusts, and something opens. Have you noticed how a simple, subtle touch can change the entire atmosphere of a conversation? A light hand on a shoulder, a gentle brush along the arm, a slow, deliberate touch at the wrist. These are not random gestures. They are signals, tiny cues that communicate presence, attentiveness, and care. And when applied intentionally, they build trust in ways words often cannot. Trust is not given, it is earned moment by moment. Emotional safety is not declared, it is felt. And subtle touch becomes the quiet, consistent language through which a man knows he can be himself without judgment. When a touch is intentional, it says, I see you, I honor you, I am here with you fully. That's why women over 50 have such an advantage. They bring a lifetime of emotional intelligence to their gestures. Consider the forearm, a place we often overlook. A light touch there while he speaks isn't about seduction, it's about acknowledgement. It signals attentiveness. It tells him that what he is sharing matters. Men may not articulate it, but their bodies respond. Their shoulders drop slightly. Their breathing slows. Their nervous system relaxes. They feel safe to continue opening. And every small touch that communicates safety compounds over time. It builds a foundation of trust brick by brick. The back of the neck is another profound site of connection. Most men carry stress there. Tension from decades of responsibilities and pressures, a subtle, deliberate touch at the base of his neck, whether as he sits across from you or as you move past him in the kitchen, communicates more than comfort, it communicates care. It signals that he doesn't have to maintain armor in your presence, that in this moment he can be vulnerable without fear. Emotional safety doesn't come from lectures or advice. It comes from repeated experiences of being held, noticed, and respected. Intentional touch works because it's predictable yet adaptable. It's not about force or constant physicality. It's about being mindful of timing, context, and meaning. A hand resting gently on his forearm as he laughs at a memory. A brief contact at the small of his back as he stands. A light touch to his hand when you want to convey encouragement. These gestures communicate continuity, stability, and presence. They reassure him that your connection is reliable and that he can let down his defenses. Subtlety is key. Overwhelming or aggressive touch can trigger the opposite response, reinforcing the protective barriers men often build around themselves. But gentle, intentional touch communicates consent, patience, and understanding. It's the difference between feeling imposed upon and feeling invited in. Emotional safety grows in spaces where men feel invited, not pressured, where touch is an affirmation, not a demand. Trust deepens when your touch is consistent. One hand on his arm here, a gentle shoulder squeeze there, and a reassuring hand at his back later. It becomes a language, a rhythm he subconsciously learns to rely on. Over time, he doesn't just feel seen, he feels understood. He doesn't just relax in your presence, he feels truly known. That is the quiet power of intentional touch. It turns ordinary moments into meaningful experiences that resonate at the core of his emotional being. Presence amplifies the effect. When your touch is accompanied by attentive eye contact, a soft voice, and an openness to listen, the trust built is exponential. Emotional safety isn't just about absence of threat. It's about the active presence of acceptance. Men who experience this feel more willing to share, to lower walls, to explore vulnerability without hesitation. They begin to associate your presence with safety, and your touch becomes a signal that it's okay to be fully themselves. Even the smallest gestures have a compounding effect. A morning hug that lingers just slightly longer, a reassuring hand on his shoulder during a stressful conversation, a playful touch on the arm as you share a joke, each moment reinforces his sense of security. It's subtle, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, but to him, it is a series of quiet assurances that he is valued, that he is wanted, and that he is emotionally safe with you. Intentional touch also has the remarkable ability to regulate emotional states. When a man is anxious, stressed, or frustrated, a gentle touch can slow heart rate, reduce cortisol, and promote calm. Neuroscience tells us that human touch releases oxytocin, the hormone of bonding, helping the body interpret the environment as safe. This is why men respond so profoundly to subtle gestures that convey care and attentiveness. Touch becomes a nonverbal dialogue that reassures him without a single word, creating a space where he feels secure enough to let down defenses. The timing of touch matters as much as the location. A hand on the back while he's speaking, a brief touch at the arm when offering encouragement, a light palm over his hand when connecting emotionally. These actions are not accidental. They are thoughtful. They demonstrate awareness of his internal state. When your touch matches his energy, when it acknowledges his feelings without overshadowing them, trust deepens naturally. Emotional safety is established in moments of attuned responsiveness, not in grand gestures. Consistency builds trust even more. Men come to expect that your presence will be steady, that your touch will communicate reassurance, that your gestures are guided by thoughtfulness and care. When repeated over time, this subtle, intentional touch transforms ordinary interactions into profound expressions of connection. He begins to understand that intimacy isn't only about romantic gestures, it's about the quiet moments where presence meets intention. Subtle, intentional touch also teaches a powerful lesson that intimacy is not about performance. Men often feel pressure to perform, to solve, to provide. Touch that communicates safety without agenda reassures him that he can simply be, that he doesn't need to impress or achieve anything to earn your care. Emotional safety is not transactional, it is relational. And intentional touch is the bridge that makes this felt reality possible. Even after decades of life experience, men respond viscerally to touch that communicates acceptance. It is a reminder that connection is a choice, a presence, and a feeling, not a requirement or a chore. For women over 50, this is a profound tool. The wisdom and confidence gained from life allows touch to be intentional, gentle, and unwavering. You don't need to perform. You only need to be fully present. That presence, coupled with a simple, deliberate gesture, communicates volumes. Ultimately, subtle, intentional touch creates a language of trust that transcends words. It reassures, comforts, and invites without demanding. It signals, I see you, I am here, you are safe. Emotional safety is cultivated in these moments, and once established, it transforms how a man engages with you and the world. He relaxes, he opens, he feels seen, and he begins to mirror that same vulnerability and trust back to you. Trust and emotional safety are not built in a day. They are nurtured in small, repeated gestures that communicate reliability, attentiveness, and care. A hand resting lightly on his arm, a gentle touch at his shoulder, a brief, reassuring palm on his back. They create a rhythm, a cadence of reassurance that resonates deeply. And over time, that rhythm becomes a foundation for lasting intimacy, understanding, and emotional connection. Presence, subtlety, intention, and consistency. These are the pillars of touch that builds trust and emotional safety. When women over 50 embrace these principles, they don't just touch men physically, they reach the very part of them that longs to be understood, accepted, and safe. The impact is quiet but profound, a testament to the power of human connection expressed through a single intentional gesture. Your touch can be a sanctuary. It can be the difference between guardedness and openness, between distance and closeness, between loneliness and connection. Every deliberate gesture carries the potential to deepen trust and create emotional safety. And when you understand this, you hold in your hands one of the most transformative tools of intimacy, the ability to communicate love, respect, and acceptance without a single word. Have you ever noticed that as men age, the things that once thrilled them about intimacy, flair, skill, or technique become less important than simply feeling understood, valued, and connected? There's a reason for this. After 50, men have lived through decades of responsibilities, pressures, and expectations. They've built careers, provided for families, navigated social and emotional challenges, and often carried the weight of needing to be strong, capable, and unshakable. Over time, the performance of life, the proving, the doing, the achieving, starts to feel heavy. And in intimate relationships, what they crave most is affirmation, not skill. They long for the reassurance that they are seen, appreciated, and desired. Not just that someone admires their abilities. Affirmation through connection speaks to a deeper need that technique cannot satisfy. While skill and technique may create fleeting pleasure, connection creates lasting emotional resonance. Men over 50 want to know that their presence matters, that they are recognized not just for what they can do, but for who they are. This is why a gentle, intentional touch, a warm gaze, or a simple affirmation can have more impact than elaborate gestures or rehearsed moves. They want to feel chosen, wanted, and safe in their vulnerability. Think about it. After years of proving themselves in work, family, and social spheres, men have often learned to hide insecurities, to mask uncertainty, and to prioritize others' expectations over their own emotional needs. The constant pressure to perform leaves little room for emotional expression. What they crave most in intimacy is not an expertly executed maneuver, but the quiet reassurance that they can relax, be themselves, and still be accepted. Connection validates their humanity in ways technique never could. This craving for connection over technique becomes even more pronounced as men confront the realities of aging. Physical changes, health concerns, and shifts in energy can make performance-driven intimacy feel stressful rather than joyful. They begin to understand that the essence of connection is presence, not perfection. They desire someone who sees beyond the mechanics of touch and interaction to the emotional landscape beneath, the part of them that wants to feel valued, wanted, and understood for simply being themselves. Connection communicates affirmation through subtle, consistent gestures, a hand on the arm while he talks, a gentle squeeze of the shoulder as reassurance, a lingering touch at the small of his back when walking together. These are not mere physical acts. They are declarations that say, you are seen, you are important, you are enough. Men over 50 respond to this kind of affirmation more deeply than to skill alone because it taps into emotional truths that have long been neglected. Affirmation also comes through acknowledgement, listening to him, noticing his efforts, celebrating his achievements, and simply being present during his moments of joy or frustration. These are forms of intimate touch in their own right. They reinforce connection, trust, and emotional safety. Men crave this because it reassures them that intimacy is not transactional. It's not about what they do or how they perform. It's about the bond they share with the person who truly sees them. Another reason men over 50 seek affirmation through connection is that they have a heightened awareness of time. They understand that life is finite and that the moments they share with someone who matters are precious. They no longer have patience for superficial interactions or mechanical routines. They want experiences that feel authentic, that honor their presence and value them for who they are in that moment. Connection becomes a lifeline, a way to experience meaning, closeness, and emotional fulfillment that transcends physical technique. Psychologically, connection activates a sense of belonging and acceptance that men may not always admit they need. In earlier years, external validation, success at work, social approval, admiration from peers might have been sufficient. But over time, internal and relational affirmation becomes far more significant. Emotional intimacy, expressed through consistent connection, provides that affirmation. It signals that he matters, that he is loved, that he is desired not for what he can achieve or perform, but for the person he already is. When a woman over 50 embraces this understanding, she wields a powerful tool. Her confidence, life experience, and emotional awareness allow her to connect in ways that feel natural, authentic, and deeply satisfying. She doesn't need to rely on performance or technique to capture his attention. Instead, she focuses on presence, empathy, and intentional gestures that speak directly to his need for affirmation. And the effect is profound. Men feel acknowledged, desired, and emotionally nourished in a way that transcends physicality. Touch, when paired with emotional attunement, becomes a language of affirmation. A light hand on his arm while listening, a soft brush of fingers along his back when he needs comfort, a reassuring palm on his chest during a quiet moment. These gestures communicate, I see you, I value you, I choose you. Men over 50 are acutely responsive to this kind of communication because it bypasses performance anxiety and reaches straight into the emotional core. It is more satisfying, more intimate, and more enduring than any technical prowess could ever be. Even in moments of vulnerability, connection affirms his worth. He may hesitate, worry, or question himself, but intentional gestures of closeness reassure him that he is accepted and loved. Affirmation through connection creates a safe space where he can let down defenses, share fears, express desires, and experience intimacy without judgment. Technique alone cannot achieve this. Skill may excite, but connection nurtures. It heals, strengthens, and transforms the relationship from a transactional interaction into a deeply bonded partnership. As men age, their nervous systems begin to respond more to emotional cues than to pure physical stimuli. Subtlety, mindfulness, and emotional presence become more effective than elaborate maneuvers or theatrical displays. This is why a simple touch that communicates attentiveness, understanding, and care resonates so strongly. Men over 50 are not just looking for sensation, they are looking for connection, affirmation, and emotional resonance. They want to feel chosen, valued, and understood in ways that words alone cannot convey. In the end, what men over 50 crave is not mastery or technique, it's meaningful connection. They long for the assurance that their presence matters, that their emotions are respected, and that their vulnerabilities are met with warmth and acceptance. Subtle, consistent, and intentional gestures of touch become the vehicle for this affirmation. Through these gestures, women over 50 can cultivate profound intimacy that speaks directly to the heart, reassuring him that he is enough exactly as he is. Connection validates, it affirms, it nurtures, it transforms simple moments of touch into experiences of trust, safety, and emotional fulfillment. Men respond to it because it meets a deep, often unspoken need, the need to feel valued, desired, and emotionally safe in a world that has often demanded performance over presence. When you understand this, you unlock a level of intimacy and closeness that far surpasses anything technique alone could offer. And that is the extraordinary truth. For men over 50, affirmation through connection is far more powerful than any display of skill. It reaches the places technique cannot touch. It communicates acceptance, desire, and safety. It builds bonds that endure, deepens emotional intimacy, and creates a resonance that lingers long after a moment has passed. It is not about what you do, but how you make him feel. And that is the key to truly transformative connection. Have you ever paused to think that touch is never just about the surface of the skin? That the places where your hand lands can speak far deeper than words ever could? For men over 50, the impact of touch isn't measured by intensity or skill. It's measured by emotional resonance. And there are 3 unexpected places where your touch lands deepest, where it reaches not the body, but the heart, the mind, and the spirit. These are places most people overlook, yet they are the gateways to connection, intimacy, and trust. The first place is his attention. It may sound intangible, but it is profoundly real. When you touch him while he's talking, even lightly, on the forearm, the shoulder, or a brief touch of the hand, you anchor him in the present moment. This simple gesture communicates, I am here. I see you. It tells him that his thoughts, his words, and his feelings matter. Men, especially those who have spent decades performing, producing, or problem solving, often crave this acknowledgement more than any physical sensation. Your touch at this place signals that he is valued for simply being himself in that moment, and it builds emotional intimacy faster than any words can. The second place is his sense of safety and vulnerability. For men over 50, much of life has been spent guarding against judgment, protecting pride, and controlling emotions. A subtle touch at the back of the neck, the small of the back, or even a reassuring hand over the shoulder conveys safety. It whispers, "You can let your guard down here. You are safe with me." This is not a physical point on the body. It is a psychological space. And when you touch it with intention, your presence reassures him that he doesn't need to perform, impress, or hide parts of himself. Emotional safety, reinforced through subtle touch, allows him to open, to breathe, and to trust. The third place is the space over his chest, the symbolic seat of his inner life, where his fears, hopes, and longings reside. When your hand rests gently there, or when a palm lingers over his heart, it communicates acceptance and appreciation. You are telling him, "I honor who you are, not just what you do." Men rarely admit how deeply they respond to this kind of affirmation. They are often trained to measure themselves by achievement, strength, or control, but a touch that reaches this place reminds them that they are valued simply for being human. It is a profound emotional connection, one that lasts far longer than any fleeting physical sensation. What makes these three places so powerful is that they bypass the surface entirely. They do not demand attention to technique, performance, or expectation. They operate on the level of feeling and meaning. When a woman over 50 touches a man at these points with mindfulness and intention, she awakens a sense of being truly seen, truly understood, and truly accepted. This is the kind of intimacy that lingers, that transforms, that deepens the bond beyond physical attraction into lasting emotional resonance. Each of these places requires awareness and presence. The forearm touch while he shares a thought, the gentle hand on the small of the back during a moment of tension, the palm over his chest in a quiet pause. All are small gestures, but their impact is enormous. Men respond because these touches communicate trust, attention, and affirmation. They reach into areas of his psyche that are rarely touched by others, and they remind him that emotional connection is more meaningful than any superficial performance. Intentionality amplifies the effect. When your touch is aligned with empathy and attentiveness, it speaks volumes. A hand on his arm while he laughs at a memory communicates joy. A reassuring touch at the shoulder during stress communicates support. A lingering hand over his chest communicates love and acceptance. Each touch is a message that bypasses words, tapping directly into his emotional core. Men over 50, having experienced decades of pressure and expectation, feel this deeply because it addresses their unspoken need to be seen and valued for who they are. These touches also create a rhythm of connection. The more consistent, thoughtful, and attuned they are, the stronger the emotional resonance becomes. Men begin to anticipate the reassurance, the affirmation, the safety embedded in your gestures, and over time, these moments create a foundation of intimacy that is profound and enduring. Connection no longer depends on external factors like circumstance or performance. It thrives on the emotional language of touch. It's important to recognize that these places, attention, safety, and the symbolic heart, are not about manipulation or strategy. They are about authentic presence. Men feel it when your touch is genuine. They respond to the sincerity, the mindfulness, and the intention behind the gesture. When you touch these emotional centers, you communicate, "I am here with you. I see you. I value you." This goes far beyond technique. It reaches the core of what men desire: emotional affirmation and connection. Life experience gives women over 50 a unique advantage in this regard. With years of learning, listening, and observing, you can sense what he needs before he even says it. You understand that a touch at the right moment can calm tension, communicate desire, or simply say, "I am here for you." The unexpected power of these three places lies in their subtlety. They are easy to miss, yet when acknowledged, they transform ordinary interactions into deeply meaningful moments. Every time your touch lands on these emotional points, it creates a ripple effect. He feels more relaxed, more seen, more connected. Walls that were built over decades of self-protection begin to soften. He becomes more open, more communicative, and more emotionally present. Your touch doesn't just comfort, it awakens, it reassures, it affirms. It becomes a silent but powerful declaration that he is wanted, understood, and cherished. In essence, these three unexpected places, attention, safety, and the space over his chest, are not physical locations but emotional gateways. When you touch them intentionally, you create intimacy that is profound, authentic, and lasting. Men over 50 may not articulate it, but they feel it deeply. They know when touch carries meaning, and they respond with trust, openness, and affection. The transformative power of these touches lies in their simplicity. You don't need grand gestures or elaborate techniques. What matters is awareness, presence, and the willingness to communicate care, respect, and affirmation through subtle, consistent gestures. Each time you touch these places with intention, you strengthen the bond between you, deepen trust, and create a connection that transcends the physical. And so the true art of intimacy is not about where you touch the body. It is about where your touch lands in the heart and mind. Men over 50 respond not to the mechanics of interaction, but to the authenticity and emotional resonance of the connection. When your touch reaches these three unexpected places, you communicate something far more powerful than words. You are seen, you are safe, you are valued. And that is the kind of intimacy that endures, that transforms, and that leaves a lasting imprint on his heart. Have you ever noticed how a small, thoughtful gesture can linger in the memory far longer than a grand, dramatic one? A gentle hand on his arm as he tells a story, a light touch at the small of his back during a quiet moment, a reassuring squeeze of the shoulder when he's stressed. These are the gestures that accumulate meaning over time. Men over 50 in particular respond to this subtlety because it communicates attention, presence, and care without overwhelming or demanding. It's the quiet, consistent acts of touch that create emotional intimacy that lasts. Grand, dramatic gestures often have a fleeting impact. They can excite in the moment, surprise, or impress, but their power diminishes quickly once the moment passes. Men over 50, having lived decades of life filled with highs and lows, begin to value reliability, consistency, and authenticity over spectacle. They crave gestures that communicate, I am here, I see you, I care about you day after day. Small, consistent touches speak to this desire because they are predictable, genuine, and deeply reassuring. The power of small, consistent gestures lies in their ability to build trust incrementally. Every light touch, every subtle gesture, every moment of attentiveness adds a brick to the foundation of intimacy. Over time, these small acts compound, creating a sense of security and emotional safety that grand gestures alone cannot achieve. A hand resting on his forearm as he laughs, a palm on his back during a quiet pause, or a gentle brush against his arm while walking together. These moments tell him, without words, I am here. You matter. You are valued. Men over 50 have often carried responsibilities that demanded performance, endurance, and strength. They have learned to prioritize others' needs and expectations over their own. In this context, small, consistent gestures of touch communicate affirmation in ways that are meaningful and digestible. They reassure him that intimacy is not about performance, excitement, or spectacle. It is about connection, trust, and reliability. These gestures say, you are enough as you are. Consistency also creates a rhythm of intimacy. Each repeated gesture reinforces the connection, reminding him of your presence and care. A touch on the arm today, a gentle squeeze tomorrow, a reassuring hand over his back the next day. This rhythm becomes a language he learns to rely on. He begins to anticipate your attentiveness, and that anticipation itself fosters comfort and emotional openness. Small, repeated touches create a continuity of connection that dramatic gestures by their nature cannot sustain. The subtlety of these gestures is what makes them profound. A soft touch does not demand attention, but it invites it. It does not overwhelm, but it communicates intent. Men over 50 respond deeply because these touches affirm their presence, validate their emotions, and allow them to relax into intimacy without feeling exposed or pressured. The cumulative effect is that ordinary moments become extraordinary through quiet, thoughtful attention. Small gestures also allow for authenticity. Dramatic gestures can sometimes feel performative or forced, creating pressure or expectation. Subtle, consistent touch, on the other hand, communicates sincerity. It demonstrates that you are present not for show, but because you care. A brief hand on his shoulder while he talks, a light touch on his arm as he laughs, a soft palm on his back when he needs reassurance. These acts speak volumes about attentiveness, empathy, and emotional resonance. Men notice and feel the difference. Another reason small, consistent gestures are so effective is that they create emotional memory. Over time, he begins to associate your presence, your touch, and your attentiveness with safety, desire, and connection. He doesn't just feel touched physically, he feels understood, valued, and emotionally affirmed. This creates a deep, enduring intimacy that is far more impactful than a single dramatic display of affection that may be intense in the moment but quickly fades from memory. Small gestures also convey patience and thoughtfulness. Men over 50 respond to this because life has often trained them to value steady, dependable experiences over fleeting excitement. A gentle touch over his hand while listening, a brief squeeze of his shoulder during a stressful moment, a light brush of fingers against his back as you pass, all communicate care, attentiveness, and intentionality. These gestures reassure him that your connection is genuine, reliable, and emotionally safe. Even subtle variations in touch can carry enormous meaning when they are consistent. The difference between an absent-minded brush of the hand and a deliberate, mindful gesture is significant. Small, intentional touches communicate presence, intention, and affirmation. Men over 50 are especially sensitive to this because they can intuitively sense the meaning behind your actions. They feel whether a gesture is performed out of habit, obligation, or authentic care, and they respond most to the latter. Consistency also fosters intimacy through predictability. When small, meaningful gestures happen regularly, he knows what to expect emotionally. He begins to feel safe to open, to relax, and to share. This predictability nurtures trust because it communicates that your attention and care are not conditional or fleeting. They are part of the steady, ongoing pattern of your relationship. Grand, dramatic gestures, by contrast, are often episodic. They create spikes of emotion, but do not provide the lasting reassurance that daily, consistent gestures offer. Small gestures also allow for deeper attunement. They encourage you to pay attention to his responses, to notice subtle shifts in mood, tension, or energy, and to adjust your touch accordingly. This sensitivity creates a feedback loop of connection. Your touch reassures him, he relaxes, you respond with further attentiveness, and intimacy deepens. Over time, this cycle builds an emotional bond that feels effortless yet profoundly secure. Men over 50 recognize the difference between a touch that communicates authenticity and one that is performative. Small, consistent gestures demonstrate reliability, care, and emotional attunement. They show that intimacy is not about theatrics, excitement, or fleeting passion. It is about presence, trust, and connection. Every touch reinforces the message: you are seen, you are valued, you are desired. The impact of these gestures extends far beyond the physical moment. He remembers them, internalizes them, and carries the emotional resonance into his daily life. A simple hand on the arm during a conversation can become a touchstone of reassurance. A gentle brush of fingers while walking together can evoke feelings of warmth and connection long after the moment passes. Small, consistent gestures create a lasting emotional imprint because they communicate care in ways that feel authentic, predictable, and safe. Even in times of stress, fatigue, or distraction, these gestures remain effective. Men over 50, having experienced decades of challenge, respond to reliability and steadiness. A light touch at the right moment can calm tension, communicate support, and affirm presence more powerfully than any dramatic overture. Small, repeated gestures become the scaffolding on which emotional intimacy is built, reinforcing connection and trust day after day. Ultimately, small, consistent gestures matter because intimacy is cumulative. Each gesture adds weight, meaning, and resonance to the bond between you. Over time, these touches create an enduring sense of connection that is far more profound than any grand or dramatic display. They communicate presence, attention, and care in a way that feels natural, authentic, and deeply reassuring. Men over 50 respond most to intimacy that feels safe, consistent, and emotionally grounded. Small, intentional touches meet this need precisely. They transform ordinary moments into opportunities for connection, deepen trust, and build emotional intimacy that lasts. They show him that your care is not conditional, fleeting, or performative. It is steady, thoughtful, and genuine. And that is the power of small, consistent gestures. They remind him that intimacy is not about drama, excitement, or spectacle. It is about reliability, attentiveness, and emotional resonance. They speak to his heart, mind, and spirit in ways that grand gestures never can. They are the quiet, persistent language of love, desire, and connection that stays with him long after the moment has passed. Let's explore this further because the magic of small, consistent gestures extends even beyond what most people realize. Each small touch, repeated over time, begins to create what psychologists call emotional scaffolding, a framework of reassurance, trust, and connection that supports the relationship at every level. Men over 50, having navigated decades of responsibilities, pressures, and social expectations, are especially attuned to these subtleties. They feel them deeply, even when they cannot articulate why a particular moment feels safe, meaningful, or unforgettable. Consistency communicates commitment without words. When a hand rests lightly on his arm during conversation today and tomorrow a soft touch reassures him during a stressful moment, he begins to internalize the message, I am valued, I am wanted, I am safe. It's a cumulative effect. One touch alone may be comforting, but repeated intentional gestures over weeks, months, and years cultivate trust that penetrates the deepest parts of his emotional experience. Grand gestures may inspire awe momentarily, but they rarely create the sustained emotional resonance that this quiet, deliberate attention does. These gestures also honor the rhythm of his life. Men over 50 often carry years of fatigue, stress, and subtle anxieties accumulated from both personal and professional responsibilities. Small, consistent touches remind him that intimacy is not performance-driven. They teach him that closeness is not measured in dramatics, but in the reliability of presence. A soft hand on the back while he reads, a gentle squeeze at the shoulder when he pauses in thought, or a brief touch along the forearm during conversation communicates that he is seen, acknowledged, and valued precisely as he is. Moreover, small gestures cultivate mindfulness in both partners. When touch is subtle, intentional, and repeated, it requires attention and awareness. You are actively noticing his state, responding to his cues, and choosing moments to connect. This mindfulness deepens intimacy because it is rooted in emotional attunement rather than physical performance. Men pick up on this attunement. They sense when your gestures are thoughtful rather than habitual, intentional rather than random. This level of care resonates on a profound emotional level, creating a bond that feels secure, affirming, and lasting. Small, consistent gestures also encourage reciprocity. When he experiences touch that communicates care, presence, and attentiveness, he is more likely to mirror that behavior through his own gestures, words, or emotional openness. The relationship becomes a loop of giving and receiving attention and connection. This reciprocity amplifies intimacy over time because it transforms the interaction from one-sided effort into a shared experience of mutual attunement and validation. Another key advantage of subtle, consistent gestures is that they allow the relationship to grow organically. Men over 50 are often wary of intensity, pressure, or grand gestures that demand a particular response. Small, repeated touches create a gentle, safe pathway for emotional intimacy to deepen. They do not overwhelm or create expectations. Instead, they nurture connection at a pace that feels natural. Over time, this creates a sense of emotional stability, a trust in the rhythm of shared presence, and an intimacy that feels effortless yet profoundly fulfilling. The effect of these small gestures is cumulative because they operate on multiple levels simultaneously. Physically, they reassure him through touch. Emotionally, they validate his presence and worth. Psychologically, they signal reliability, consistency, and attentiveness. Spiritually, they communicate that the bond you share transcends performance and exists in the shared space of mutual understanding and care. Men feel all of this, even when they cannot put it into words. The impact is subtle, profound, and enduring. Small, consistent gestures also remind him that intimacy is about connection, not perfection. Men over 50 may have spent decades feeling pressure to perform, to meet expectations at work, in family life, and in relationships. Touch that is steady, gentle, and intentional reassures him that intimacy does not require perfection. He can be human, vulnerable, and real, and still be loved and desired. This reassurance transforms ordinary touch into emotional sustenance, something that lingers in his memory and becomes part of the fabric of your relationship. Importantly, these gestures build emotional resilience in the relationship itself. When intimacy is grounded in consistent, thoughtful touch, small conflicts, misunderstandings, or stressors are less likely to create distance. The steady rhythm of connection becomes a stabilizing force. He knows that, despite challenges, there is a foundation of presence, care, and reassurance that persists. This stability is far more valuable than dramatic demonstrations of affection, which can create spikes of emotion but rarely provide long-term support. Small, consistent gestures also cultivate anticipation and delight. Because they are thoughtful, yet understated, they are felt more profoundly than overt displays. A gentle touch on the arm, a lingering hand at the back, a soft brush along the shoulder. These moments become touchstones in his mind. He anticipates them, remembers them, and associates them with safety, connection, and affirmation. The subtlety itself creates a sense of intimacy that is personal, private, and profoundly moving. Finally, these gestures communicate respect for his autonomy. Men over 50 value independence and dignity, and grand, dramatic gestures can sometimes feel overwhelming or intrusive. Subtle, consistent touches honor his space while still building intimacy. They affirm that closeness is a choice, a shared experience, not something imposed or demanded. This respect enhances emotional safety and allows intimacy to flourish naturally and sustainably. In the end, small, consistent gestures matter because they create intimacy that endures. They speak the language of trust, affirmation, and emotional resonance. They show him that your care is reliable, your presence is genuine, and your attention is authentic. Men over 50 respond profoundly to this because it addresses their deep, often unspoken need to feel valued, desired, and emotionally safe. Over time, these gestures transform ordinary moments into a rich tapestry of connection, creating intimacy that stays with him long after the touch has passed. The remarkable truth is that intimacy is rarely born from spectacle. It grows quietly, steadily, and intentionally. Each gentle touch, each brief hand on the arm, each soft palm resting on his back or shoulder builds an emotional legacy. Men remember these moments because they feel them on levels beyond the physical. They carry the reassurance, the care, and the presence you communicate in these small acts throughout their lives. And that is the extraordinary transformative power of small, consistent gestures. They turn ordinary, everyday interactions into lasting emotional intimacy. They build trust, reinforce connection, and create a profound sense of security and affirmation. They show him, quietly but unmistakably, that he is seen, valued, and deeply cherished. Over time, these gestures become the foundation of intimacy that not only endures but grows richer with every touch.